Okay, guys, I am diving in with Ronda Collier from SweetWater Health. Do you know what this, Rhonda? It's 10 years ago when we first met this month.
Oh,
You
wow.
believe that?
Yeah, you were one of
So,
our early advocates. Yeah.
yep, Rhonda and I met through Ben Greenfield. It was a superhuman coach conference we did. Ben did one and done conference back in 2013. Remember Dave Asprey was there, Jimmy
Yep.
Moore, and all these
Yep.
people, the cold therapy. We were kind of way ahead of all these kind of biohacking stuff that's out now. That was way before all this other conferences started. And Rhonda was there talking about heart rate variability and how to test and not guess, or HRV, and figure out all that information. But I'll throw in a month later, I realized, oh my gosh, we're talking about all this stuff I'm experiencing. And then I got my so-called adrenal exhaustion, adrenal fatigue, and wrote my book that you helped edit. The Life is Not a Race, It Is a Journey, and the Holistic Method. And fast forward, it's 10 years later. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, how did this happen?
I
So I,
know.
I wanted to have you on the show, partially because I was like, oh my gosh, it's our 10-year anniversary, and how important it is to help other athletes avoid going through what I went through almost, as I said, 10 years ago when I started to fall apart and have never been the
Your
same.
story is so important. It
Yeah.
really is.
And I'm finally
And
just sharing it.
how you hit that burnout, that level of burnout of
Mhm.
adrenal fatigue, and then how you rebuilt yourself back.
And I
Um,
really didn't rebuild until we moved here to post COVID, well, during COVID to San Diego. And I left everything, my life in Seattle and my crazy schedule, and luckily closed my fitness studio. That was my main stressor. So, I always talk all the time on the show that can't out supplement poor lifestyle habits. And
yeah.
you can't, you got to test and not guess, and measuring things and figuring out what works for you, because it is such an N=1 journey, and how we have to stop, pause, and course correct so often. And that's where I think testing our heart rate variability is so essential. And I wanted you to kind of talk about what has, since you started, when did Sweet Beats start, or SweetWater?
2011.
Wow. Yeah. And Ben was one of your first people that you started
Ben was
working
one
with?
of our first people. Yep. And
Mm.
Dave Asprey.
Wow. So what's
Um,
happened in the past 10 years? How's this evolved since you started with HRV, and now
yeah.
fast
Well,
forward?
um, have done a lot of work that ended up just sort of sitting in a we need more resources, I'll just be honest. But we learned a lot about sleep
Mm-hmm.
staging in HRV. It's a very difficult algorithm to develop, but with the new AI that is coming about, that's a little more at your fingertips, I think we're going to revisit that, because we made a lot of progress in doing sleep stage detection. But given that, even with what we have today, you can measure whether you had restorative sleep. And so we can go into that later.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we've had a huge interest in alternative health professionals with HRV. There's a lot of energy spas popping up these days where
Mm-hmm.
people have post electromagnetic field therapy, far infrared therapy, hyperbolic, all these different therapies at their energy spa. And
Mm-hmm.
so they're interested in measuring HRV as well, so that their clients can see what these modalities are actually doing and which ones are working for them and which ones aren't. So they can actually measure their HRV before and after each of those different techniques.
Why don't
Um,
we should just touch on what is HRV for people that like hear it all the
oh, okay.
time. What
All right.
kind of the short
Yeah.
version? What is HRV?
Yeah. So it's heart rate variability. And I usually use the analogy that if your heart beats at 60 beats per second, it doesn't beat at 1 second intervals like a metronome. It beats at, and let me back up a little bit. If you picture an EKG with the spike, boom, boom, spike, the time between those beats is called an RR interval. It's a R to R anyway. That's your beat time. And so they don't beat at 1 second intervals like 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. The time between will be like 0.98 seconds, 0.92 seconds, 1.02 seconds, 1.08 seconds. And then that will average out to 1 second intervals or 60 beats per minute. So heart rate variability is the natural variation of the time between heartbeats.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're healthy, you have a lot of variability in general. And what that does is it shows you that your sympathetic nervous system, which speeds the heart up, is in constant play with your parasympathetic nervous system, which slows the heart down. So for example, when you're lying down, your heart rate's nice and slow and relaxed. And then when you stand up, your heart rate needs to increase so that your blood pressure equalizes quickly. So you expect your sympathetic nervous system to engage, speed your heart up, so you don't get a head rush and pass out. And then your heart rate should come right back down to where it was, to its relaxed state. So that's why a high heart rate variability is indication of a very robust nervous system, and it's a sign of health.
So we always say test and not guess. So we want to know what our heart rate variability is so we are more resilient to stress.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then we want to know the breakdown. I think that's what I learned from you is that what you just said, the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system, are we in balance? Or as many high charging individuals that we are over here are sympathetic dominant. And we want to know how to test where are we with our sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system. That LF, low frequency, relates to the measurement of our sympathetic nervous system and the right. And then the HF, because it's always opposite. HF is high frequency, and that means parasympathetic nervous system.
That's right. That's
so to test that, how do we do that? Because we've talked a long time, like Oura Ring, people wear Whoop.
Yeah.
I know when I use your product, I'm wearing a heart rate monitor chest strap, and we've got that. And then there's all these other devices up. We talked like the
and
finger
we now
gets.
have
Yeah, I saw that on your website. So
handheld.
Handheld. So what is the best way to measure? If I want to know what is my HRV, what is my LF to HF score? And then I want to know, because I want to see, okay, what lifestyle habits, breathing techniques, biohacks, supplements, my sauna, what things can I do to improve it? So how do we measure it first?
Yeah. So I really want to stress that you need single lead EKG accuracy to get a good HRV. And there's multiple reasons for that. One of which is a good HRV requires millisecond accuracy. And so there's been numerous studies that show a good chest strap, which is measuring the electrical signal. So if you picture an EKG, a single lead is 2 stickers on your chest.
Oh, yeah.
And what it's doing is it's measuring the resistance through your body. Okay. The chest strap is equivalent enough to like a Holter monitor single lead EKG. We also have now, you have the Alive Core, which still has kind of a closed system, so we can't get to the data. But now we have the WellU Duo EKG, which is like the Alive Core, which is a single lead EKG. And so now you can use this with the SweetWater Health line of products. And so a lot of products offer the iPhone camera and any sort of optical, like a Fitbit, like an iWatch,
or your Garmin,
the Oura Ring. We love all these products, by the way. We're not dissing them. But what they're doing is they're measuring, they shine a little LED light, we'll just say on the wrist or on the finger. And they're measuring the expansion and contraction of capillaries. And so instead of getting, if you picture an EKG, that sharp electrical pulse, you're getting sort of this pulse wave is what it's called. And they're kind of guessing. It is. We tried. We studied this deeply. We really wanted this to work for us. So people didn't want to have to wear a chest strap. But anything that's using a camera or an optical is measuring the expansion and contraction of capillaries. And so they're kind of getting your heart rate from that. Okay. Now, we've studied it in heart rate. It's good enough, actually. It's pretty darn good. But heart rate variability, super sensitive to motion. These optical, super sensitive to motion. And so they've got algorithms trying to filter out any motion you're doing. On top of the algorithm that's guessing where that peak is. Okay? And so very difficult to get a really accurate, millisecond accurate interval between heart rates using optical. So Apple Watch does have the finger on the
Oh,
thing.
they do.
They do, but they only measure for 20 seconds.
Ooh.
And so they are going through the watch around the body to this finger. So that is single lead EKG. But the medical community has what's called, it's basically a standard for short-term heart rate variability, and that's a 5-minute window.
So to measure heart rate variability most accurate, we need to have a single lead EKG and measure for 5 minutes.
Yeah, and we've done some testing where we can get away with 3 minutes. So there's short term, which is 5 minutes technically, and long term, which is 24 hours. So these are the medical standards. And so also I see, so the 20-second SDN-N, which we can talk about later, it's one of the ways to measure your variability. It's a standard deviation of your RR intervals. It is not useful because you need the 5-minute window to get any useful values. And like I said, 3 minutes, we've determined we prefer you do 5 minutes, but if you want 3 minutes, then that seems to be good enough. So yeah, so you want to stick with the standards that have been studied for 30 years, single lead EKG accuracy and a 5-minute window.
But testing for 5 minutes while lying down and focusing on nasal breathing.
Exactly. So you want to be in the same position. Now, if you're going to do it every day sitting up, then you have to do it every day sitting up.
But that's a lot lower, or like not as optimal score, right? If you're standing or sitting in a chair testing it, isn't it lower?
I think if you're lying down is because especially for athletes, when they're doing it every day, you haven't started thinking about your day. So the best way to do it, and that's why we love this and highly recommend this. Not everyone can support this because it took Jo Beth Dow's engineering prowess to get the data from this. Yeah. Cool. So then what you'll do is wake up in the morning, you'll grab your duo EKG and you'll just lie there and relax and not think about your day. And that will give you your best HRV for training.
But you touch that and then you have that connected to your app.
So yeah, this is a Bluetooth, just like a chest strap.
Okay.
We also have this in a patch, but for the morning, I just leave this on my bedside, pick it up, start and there you go. Yeah. So you start your day. Yeah.
I just had a flashback though. Didn't we use patches 10 years ago?
We did.
I remember testing that out with Brock.
Yeah. The Vital
Armstrong and I were doing that.
Yeah. They went medical and didn't want to support the consumer model, which unfortunately they're great guys, but it was to their detriment. I think a lot of people, even AliveCor moved towards selling it on Amazon.
Oh,
because the medical community, the doctors and all of that, there's they are kind of stuck in their ways, and mobile apps and things like that just aren't in their purview. And so, whereas, especially athletes, I'm just going to say in general, biohackers, are motivated. Yeah. And so they'll go ahead and embrace new technologies a lot more quickly than doctors.
Talk about motivated. My clients, because when I test people or coach people, I do more kind of the holistic method coaching program, and I look at all their metrics, and then I get people that have Oura Ring, they have the Whoop, they've got their Apple Watch, they're doing it all. So then we've got all these different numbers and scores and readiness, recovery. It's all different numbers, but so we measure it for 5 minutes. Sit there, lie down, ideally, work on breathing exercises, breathing through your nose, kind of slow. What's the best way to measure?
So the best way is to breathe naturally.
Okay.
Your heart rhythm, HRV, is deeply affected by your breathing. So when we talk about some of the first heart rate variability out there that people heard of was HeartMath, which is they've got so much research. And so what they do is, besides trying to invoke a sense of joy, the deep breathing causes your heart rhythm to sync with your breathing. And it's extremely valuable because what it does is cause your breathing to now sync with your heart rhythm. And then what that ultimately does is cause the nervous system to sync with your breathing, which then causes your blood pressure regulation to sync with your breathing, your brain waves to sync. And what this is, creates a coherent state that it has huge benefit. That said, that deep breathing affects your heart rate variability.
Hmm.
And so, especially when you're looking at training aspects, you want to go ahead and just breathe naturally, because we want to see what your nervous system's doing without introducing
Mm,
the sinus rhythmia,
okay.
which is what it's called.
So if we're
Um,
looking at
from deep
more
breathing.
measuring HRV to know, are we recovered? Are we
Yeah,
repaired?
just breathe
And
naturally.
am I needing to take a rest day, or are my hormones out
Exactly.
of whack that I'm luteal phase, your HRV is dropping?
Yeah.
And so really tracking everything, I find that fascinating for female athletes, and then knowing what to do with it. So we test, we get this number, and then
Yeah.
what do we do? How do we know?
Well,
Is
so
that optimal? What's good?
while we have a basic HRV for training feature in SweetBeat HRV, for really serious athletes, I recommend using our Recover Faster app, because it takes into account things like sleep, your mood, are you sore? And it really is targeted for the more serious athlete. And that will incorporate all these other more subjective things, but they matter. Did you sleep 3 hours last night? Because we need to know that. That sleep is where your nervous system recovers itself.
Mhm.
And so we recommend using the Recover Faster app to get your recovery score. That said, then you can download that into SweetBeat HRV, because they all go to our database, which is private, by the way. And you can download that, and then you can get all the geek screen information, like your LF, your HF, your RMSSD, your VLF, your all the stuff.
That's what I like to look at. Is I like to look at the LFHF because I
Yeah.
find that so fascinating. So can that data go into Training Peaks, or like I use Practice Better for
Yeah, so
coaching
we
clients?
connect in with RestWise and Training Peaks.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
they
and
can
then
get
we
all that.
added that to the app. So if you're not hooked up, you just go in the app. We used to have it on the website, and we just moved it into linking your accounts for Training Peaks and RestWise and through the app.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah.
I think a lot of people, when they want simple and collect more data without doing anything, so that's why I think people use the Whoop or Aura Ring, but they're not
Mm-hmm.
probably getting the most accurate numbers. And then there's people that I don't know, your numbers versus Aura Ring numbers versus Whoop versus Apple Watch. Those
Yeah.
ranges are not, the algorithms are all different, correct? So they're going to be, say I'm 110 HRV on my Aura Ring, but then on a Whoop, I might show up as 45. And so it's all
Yeah,
different.
there's no industry standard. We sort of stuck with the logarithmic based on RMSSD, which is, I think, I know HRV for training does that. I know iThlete does that, because it comes through the medical literature. So exact how they're using the log, is it natural log, is it log base 10, but with SweetWater, we use a range from 0 to 100, because those are numbers that people can deal with.
Yeah, makes
Going over
sense.
100, what's 110? You know, um, so yeah, each company did it different. I like 0 to 10 or 0 to 100. 0 to 100 gave more granularity.
Mhm.
And so for SweetWater products, it's 0 to 100.
Okay. So we have a
Yeah.
number. So say someone did their recovery and they're, 75, and
Mm-hmm.
then they drop to 45, which
Right.
is lower number is not so
Right.
good, higher is
Right.
better. So
Yeah.
what do we do? How do we use this information? What have you learned to help people improve
Yeah.
their
So
HRV?
our algorithm is based on clinical research. They had a control group that they used standard training methods.
Mm.
And then the other group used HRV incorporated in with the standard training methods to determine what level of workout to do each day. And so they measured the results based on VO2 max.
Mm.
Okay, so it was a clinical study. So we use their algorithm. And what you're doing is you're comparing yourself to yourself
Mm.
over a 10-day window. So we didn't just make this stuff up. We used something that came through a clinical study. And so what it does is there'll be now a 10-day running window. We give you a result after 3 or 4 mornings, but after 10 days, now you're getting a clinically studied result showing you whether you should work out as usual, you're recovered really strong, do a hard workout today, or today's a low exertion day. And if you have reduced HRV 2 days in a row, it's a rest day. And so what you'll do is do your little reading in the morning while relaxing in bed, breathing normally. And then what it'll do is come and tell you you're where you are compared to you based on the algorithm from the clinical study. And so if you follow that, then you should have better outcomes in your training.
Yeah. So I think that's important that you're comparing your data to your data.
Right. That's why I wanted to say that when you said you're at 75 and you go to 45, well, it's compared to you, because HRV changes for different age groups. It changes. It's different from men to women. And so our daily beat app, which is really geared towards the lay person, not necessarily the athlete, but it does show you, it puts your HRV into a nice quadrant, and it's based on others of your age and gender. So you'll see where you are compared to your peers.
Of your gender, yeah.
Yeah.
That's important, because I think too, if you get into the female athlete of premenopausal and the time of their menstrual cycle, the follicular ovulation to luteal phase, that's a lot of good data on there, how it will change.
It is everything. Yeah. And people, it's so important to understand that we're talking about your nervous system, which can be affected by thoughts. It can be affected by what you ate, environmental factors, what you're exposed to. And I loved, Debbie, in your book, I really learned, I got a Fitbit for a while and it made me stand up, that sitting is the new smoking.
Yes.
And so are you sitting all day? Are you getting up every hour? And I marched in place for my little 250 steps, but I'm really aware of that now. All that affects the nervous system. And so it's not a really straightforward thing. And that's why you have to compare yourself to yourself, and also kind of keep in mind, did you sleep well? Did you drink enough water? You know, what's going on in your life?
So testing in the morning's best time. Is it helpful to do it at nighttime to help kind of wind down and stack it?
So what we can actually measure whether you got restorative sleep. And so it's a feature we could put in if there was enough interest, is to do a 3-minute reading before you go to sleep, and then do a 3-minute reading when you wake up. And your HRV should have increased.
Overnight.
Yeah.
If you have restorative sleep.
Sleep with a chest strap on and watch what your nervous system's doing. We've tested lots of people on that. Like I said, we were doing sleep stage, detection. And so we had a lot of people sleeping with it overnight. And if you get a good night's sleep, you'll watch your nervous system start recovering. It's almost linear, not quite, through the night. So yeah, so that is a reason to do it in the evening.
So when you do that though, do you have to have the app then on, and you can put it in Bluetooth mode or Wi-Fi turn off and it will record it?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
So it can record an overnight.
No cell phone in the bedroom, Wi-Fi on, so you can turn it off.
No,
and
I
still
hear
record.
you. I hear you. But if you want to measure it, that's what you got to do. I know. I turn my people are like, I called you, and I'm like, well, my phone's like off at night.
Yeah, after 7 for me and downstairs.
Yeah.
So I think for a lot of athletes, so they're, and the people that are into the biohacking and how to stack things and figure out what works, so they test and not guess. But even as we have our new sunlight and near, mid, and far infrared sauna, and testing what can I do before, during, and after to optimize that experience and help my body in HRV, and doing that at nighttime or morning and measuring that with my HRV, see if that made a difference. Or, adding some sleepy time yin yoga. I've been doing at nighttime before bed for 15 minutes. So is there any things that you found are good ways? I found different articles online, but what are some good tips for people that are struggling with low HRV and they need to improve it or would like to?
Yeah. So for some of those, I just wear the strap during the treatment and see what it's doing. We've tested with acupuncture to see what happens after the needles go in.
I used to do that.
Craniosacral. I've got a little PowerPoint showing what happened during craniosacral. And so what I recommend is if where it's possible, put on a chest strap and have your phone in there and measure what's going on and see, because you could be mentally stressing. I went into your energy spa in Los Gatos, and they have this squeezy thing that squeezes and gets your pulse synced up or something. And it was freaking me out. So, and well, afterwards, you know what? My sore calves were better and it really did help. During the treatment, I was stressing out. And so you want to know this. And sometimes I'm very aware because of the work that I've done, all in meditation and self-awareness, that I know when I'm stressing out. But a lot of people aren't. The brain is this giant filter and pattern matcher, and it will filter out anything familiar, even if it's dysfunctional. So people who are used to being stressed and don't know it aren't able to sense that. There's not enough awareness of that because the brain's just filtering it out. And so by measuring, you can find out which of these treatments or modalities, or, is yoga helping you, or you're mentally so tense because it's straining your calf muscles or your hamstrings that maybe you should do a restorative class instead.
Yeah.
So measuring this will really help you see that.
That's why, go ahead, sorry.
We get into this whole, I'm going to do yoga, it's so good for me. But yoga is hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Our joints hold emotions, our joints hold stress. And sometimes those things, the body wants to hold on to that, And so opening joints up can be a stressful thing. And perhaps rather than doing this power yoga where you're just going to hurt yourself, or a hatha yoga where you're going to still open the joints up, you may want to do a restorative or a basic class and move a little slower with that until the body's able to release. And you'll be able to measure that with HRV.
Well, that's what I think is so important. What I'm trying to help coach clients now on how chronic stress impacts the whole you from the inside out. So even if you're, trying the nutrition, eating nutrient dense whole foods, if you're trying keto, carnivore, paleo, whatever you want to call it, and you're exercising, but you're not dealing with the other elements of the holistic method as stress management and measuring this information, I think it's so important because all areas of holistic health are impacted if you have excessive nonstop chronic stress. And if you don't identify those triggers, external stressors, like driving in your car and there's someone slow in front of you, and knowing how to react, or having a new job. I have someone that's a new job and they just like, I can't handle all this stress right now, but I'm like, well, okay, that's what we're working on.
Debbie, this was my favorite when we first started SweetWater. It's the same traffic jam at the same exit every day.
Yes.
It's going to be there. And yet you let yourself get worked up.
Yes.
And so that's what we coined the term generative feedback. And so if you can just drive with the chest strap on, and you can turn it on where it'll alert you, and you'll be like, here I am at Saratoga Avenue, stressing out. It's always backed up here. And so if you can change that one behavior, you can reduce your stress incredibly. Like every day now, you're not moving into fight or flight. You're just going to do some deep breathing. But to your point too, with your for coaches like you and other health professionals to start incorporating professional HRV or recover coach into their practice, because then you can get trained on how to help your clients and patients interpret. So you can go, what I noticed here? Because a lot of people, our main feature on our Sweet Beat apps are stress levels. And then the HRV for training recommendations. We have a willpower for people trying to lose weight. We have all kinds of things, and having your coach or health professional being able to monitor that and explain to you. My video went off.
It just, well, you're frozen. So.
Oh, okay. It came back on. Okay.
But I think it is so important, the chronic stress, as if you turn on your video, I'll just keep talking, but the chronic stress.
Okay.
It went
Here
off.
we go.
But I think the stress part, because I coach people that are struggling, trying to do all the right things, quote unquote, air quotes around that they're struggling to get results because they're trying to do too much of everything. They're trying to eat too little. They're exercising too much, or too much high heart rate exercise or long distance chronic cardio, that they are doing this on top of a busy life. And a lot of people are fasting too much and too long for the athletes that are already fit. So I think it's a struggle for people doing too much of everything that they hear about, not knowing that's for metabolically damaged, overweight people. And we're talking to the active individual who's taking all these things to the extreme.
My video died and it won't start up. So
okay, we just get to look at me.
yeah, we get to look at you. Let's see. I don't know. It's a Zoom problem, I think, because nothing's been
It's all
working
right.
this whole time. Yeah, let's go.
So
Okay.
I think what you're saying is that to test overnight or test while you're in traffic, but I would be interested in too. People really want to know what's going on. Also look at a CGM, so continuous glucose monitor while they're in traffic, because that's one thing I realized. Yeah, I stress out. Look at my glucose is doing what I'm stressed. So I gained all this, my weight when I started adrenal exhaustion 10 years ago. I gained 30 pounds without changing my exercise, without changing my nutrition plan. And I got over fat and lost muscle and I couldn't sleep. So that was all part of it. But the importance of knowing how this stress that we are accumulating externally, internally all adds up. And so if we don't test with the HRV, we might not know, how can I manage it? How can I control how I respond to stress, and what can help me become more resilient?
Right. Right. You need to measure it. Otherwise you don't know.
Yeah. And I think everyone's so different, how
They
we
are,
react to
and
stress. Like, why did I have my stuff happen to me and other people can push through it and I more not as strong genetically?
because we all have different traumas in our lives. And so we all see the world through a particular shade of rose.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to comment that we all think we're right as well. And so it's important to try to see other people's perspective on things, because I picture a circle with little pie sections, and we all see through one of those pie sections. But the thing is, there's all these other pie sections we don't see through. But that's why some people push through things,
Mm-hmm.
and some people don't. You had different traumas, you had different experiences, and that, if you will, shaped your neural pathways in your brain. And so in psychology, it's called transference and countertransference.
Hmm.
And so I spent 3 years learning about this because I was trained to be a therapist. And so if I have a client that reminds me of my sister that used to beat me up, I will react to that client as if she's my sister.
Wow.
Okay. And so that's why we're therapists. That's one of the reasons it takes so much training, because you can damage someone and then now it's countertransference or projection on that other person. So this is why we need to measure, because what might bother me won't bother you, and vice versa. And so, and that's why it's because we have different experiences and responses to things. And actually that's our goal, is to respond and not react.
Yes.
You know, our goal is to let the life go by without us being reactionary to it.
But you don't want to step those emotions and not deal with them either.
You want to
notice I know a lot
them.
of people just put them aside and go, okay, I'm going to push through it. Then they keep being stuffed down there deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
And
no, it's real, that gets really into your holistic approach of noticing your emotions. Mm-hmm. And then you can get pretty deep in that. That's where sort of meditation helps. And you notice the emotion as a neutral observer. Mm. And so you let the emotion happen without it causing some sort of a physical reaction, or letting it become who you are, because it's a transient emotion. The first time I noticed it, we've all had crushes on people, and then when it doesn't work out, every time you see a car that looks like theirs, people I know so many people that this happens to. And so it happened to me. And so because I had the training in graduate school, I would see the car, and then there'd be a delay before I'd have the stomach the butterflies in my stomach. And I'm like, oh my God, I just was able to notice how seeing something out in the environment caused a physiological response for me and a stress response. And so once again, sort of continuous monitoring of HRV can let you actually see that. And you can, like I said, set SweetWater products up to alert you. Because a lot of people, it's so fast and you're just not trained. I spent 3 years being trained, so it still took forever for me to notice. So,
well, I think a lot of athletes probably could relate to that if they let themselves be vulnerable for a moment to understand, stop, pause, and go, why do I do races? Why do I train so hard? What am I running to? What am I running from? I've said before. And I think a lot of that is there's something else there that people are not trying to face those emotions. And so I find a lot of athletes have that addictive personality, or they have trauma or emotions they don't want to deal with, or they don't want to be still on the weekend and have spare time because they just keep pushing it and overtraining, and they don't know how to be quiet or be by themselves, or, you know, find happiness in different forms besides exercise.
And you're so right, because a lot of athletes in particular, but there's overeating, there's drinking, there's all kinds of, you know, even the ones who go for extreme experiences, there are really a lot of subconscious running away from feelings they don't want to feel.
Yeah. And that's why
I think that's really important.
But that's why I think knowing what am I doing to myself, take ownership of your health, you know, test and not guess, as we say every time, but is you don't know what you don't know. So you can just continue avoiding it. But if you are a high performer, high charging athlete who wants to optimize your health and improve the aging process, you're training and doing all this to be a better athlete, but why aren't you trying to be a better person and be a better person, your future self, you know, doing what you can do now so you're thriving in your next 10, 20, 30 years. And I think a lot of people don't see the damage you're doing, even though you think you're healthy. So that's kind of what I say, being fit and healthy from the inside out, why this is important to test.
Right.
The right ways.
I totally agree.
So go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to comment on, you know, you're one of the few, what I consider hardcore athletes that really thinks in this holistic method. And I'm so glad that you've put this forward, because it's hard work.
Yeah.
And I wanted to comment too that everyone goes, well, I can't meditate. Okay, you're not special, honey. You're not special. Nobody can meditate. But I've got no. In fact, I'm coaching my friend's daughter who wants to lose some weight. And she had, I don't need to go into it, but suffered some pretty intense traumas. I know, I was there when she was young. And so she said, I can't meditate. And I said, nobody can, honey. I said, count your breaths to 10.
Yeah.
And do this 10 times. And if you only get to 3 and you lost count, start over, and it's okay. Don't beat yourself up. But I just want to remind everybody that no, you're not special in the can't meditate camp.
Yeah. It's common. You just
and
keep
just
counting.
Count your breaths.
Yeah.
You know, and some people can't get to 10 without losing track, and that's okay. Eventually you will. It's a human thing.
So that kind of goes into a couple, we're going to have not enough time to go over everything. It's with touching on sleep, people that are trying to recover, but also we always talk about, you said the word fat loss, and a lot of people exercise struggle with losing weight. You'll see a lot of people at races that are fit but fat and, you know, trying to lose weight, but they're not. But how stress can impact that ability to burn fat, and how not sleeping enough, but how that correlates with our stress management, being more resilient, and how we can use that HRV, the LF to HF score that actually in a roundabout way can maybe show up in being able to finally lose fat weight if we're so sympathetic dominant. Is any correlations with sleep and fat loss and performance?
Well, the whole cortisol axis, as you know very well, more than me, the real details of how that affects your fat burning. and your ability to keep your optimal weight.
Mhm.
Stress is the weak link in so much of this. But I also want to point out the food people are eating. You might, a calorie is not a calorie. I argued with a very close old friend of mine who, and I had to send her something finally. I'm like, you know, a calorie of candy is not the same as a calorie of broccoli. It's just not. And so a lot of people are eating bad food still with
Yeah.
everything we know, but they're addicted to it. They're stress eating, they're stress
Mhm.
working out. There's this whole chain of events, and I really think for a lot of these people, it's sort of hiding from painful feelings.
Yeah. No, that
And
goes back
so
to your trauma.
it does. And so for the fit but fat, but then there's the skinny on the outside and fat on the inside. You know, I know someone that he's the awesome guy, tall and skinny, and has eaten terribly all his life because he could, and then having some pretty serious health issues in his 60s now, you
Mhm.
know. And it's like so, you know, I tried to turn him on to, he loves ice cream, and ice cream's great in moderation, but not, you know, a half a gallon every day. Just because you're not going to get fat, it's not good for you.
Yeah.
But also testing your food. So
Mhm.
SweetWater has the food test. Food Effect is a free app. You can go download it in the App Store. It's only on iOS right now, unfortunately, but um, it's
But
based on,
HRV, you're saying will show a difference if you have foods that you're reactive to. So another source of stress we're getting into is food that you're reactive to, as I
well,
do
I think
functional lab
I think
testing.
with HRV, more importantly, you're going to see that you're stress eating.
Mhm.
I don't know that there's no studies that really correlate directly with food
Mm.
and HRV. But there is the stress eating. You'll see that.
Because your heart
But there,
rate will go up if
well,
you
that's
have
heart rate. So
food.
that's
Yeah,
where the
heart
Coca
rate.
Pulse test, the
Yeah.
food effect. So
Yeah.
this is scientifically understood. So if you eat something you may not be overtly allergic to, but you have sort of some covert reactions to, your heart rate will increase after you eat these foods. And so that's what the pulse test does in food effect. So you basically take a morning pulse for a baseline, then you take your pulse right before you eat a meal, just to make sure you just didn't come back from the gym and your heart rate's not artificially elevated. And then you take it 30, 60, and 90 minutes after you eat. And if as long as you're just doing normal activity, your heart rate should stay within a certain amount. And if it goes too high, you've eaten something that you're sensitive to, which contributes to inability to lose weight.
Yeah. And it's a less expensive way than doing a $400 food sensitivity test or wheat sumer
Yeah,
or
yeah,
panel. But,
yeah,
you know, if people can't afford lab testing, I would say measure your heart rate, do the Cocoa Pulse test. I send
yeah,
them the
yeah,
directions, you know, test your heart rate variability. How's your stress? You know, if you
yeah.
can't afford all the labs, we can figure out different ways, you know, testing with your
And
grabbing
yeah,
that data.
the low hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this stuff is, you know, $70 for a heart rate monitor and $10 for an app. Um, for a lifetime of being able to measure this stuff, though not a lifetime. My polar H, it was the H whatever one. I just bought an H9 because
Oh,
they do after, you know, 11 years, it finally pooped out on me.
that's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, it is pretty. And I used it a lot. I go to the gym and do heart rate training, and I actually used it a lot. So,
So
yeah, this is a really inexpensive way to,
yeah,
and I
easy.
just want to say, taking your health into your own hands,
Yeah.
you know, not relying on the doctor to read your lab results and tell
Because
you what to
everyone's
do.
normal. Well, no, they don't tell you what to do. They'll just say you're normal.
Yeah,
You're
well,
good. You're okay.
yeah,
Not look at
exactly.
what I look at. So with
Yeah.
that, with the exercise, you can use heart rate monitor with their exercise, and then the sleeping. How do you like to track people's deep sleep and recovery from their sleep? If restorative, is that just coming through in a roundabout way, testing their HRV? If they
Yeah.
had a
So
good
you would
sleep?
do a 3-minute reading before you go to bed and a 3-minute reading when you wake
Yeah.
up,
I
and you
know that.
should see um, an increase in your HRV. We don't have a feature for that, but like I said, if we found enough interest, it's easy to put in.
And then for females, men versus women, what are some differences there for gender?
I would get the Daily Beat app and
Mhm.
download your sessions into that. I'd just go ahead and spend the whole $15 and get
Mhm.
Daily Beat, which shows you a quadrant of
Mm.
where you are compared to others your age and gender. Also gives nice recommendations. Today your stress is high and your HRV is low. This is a good nap day, and don't try to get any focus work. But your HRV's high and your stress is high, could be eustress. This is a perfect day to finish up the loose ends or do creative work. So we actually look at what we've measured, and then give you really appropriate recommendations.
What about hot and cold? So doing a sauna, a cold shower, a cold plunge, is that because that's a hormetic stress? So if we're doing short doses of heat stress, cold stress, can you
Yeah,
do you
so
measure
what
that?
I would recommend for that is to watch your long-term heart rate variability from your morning reading,
Okay.
because it puts your body into an acute stress. I don't know that measuring right after you get out of an ice bath is
Mhm.
going to be useful, because you could find your body in a contraction state.
But over
Um,
time, though, wouldn't it
over time,
improve it?
exactly.
Yeah,
Yes,
not during, I
over
don't mean
time.
testing right afterwards, but
Oh,
in that
yes,
daily
totally. Yeah,
self-care routine,
yeah,
with if I start doing yin yoga at night with some breathing
yeah,
exercises, doing a hot cold sauna morning
yeah,
or early evening, all these different habits that incorporating throughout my day, my morning HRV reading,
yeah.
in theory, should be better if I'm doing all this self-care, self-love
That's
activities.
right. That's right. And with Sweetwater, we have the history, where you can look at all your sessions individually, or you can look at the charts and see where you can see your trends.
Mhm.
So you can have all of them, or you can choose the last 20 sessions or whatever. And so that's really, I'm glad you brought that up. It's an important point, because going back to when we were talking about the HRV for training algorithm, you compare you to you,
Yeah.
because everyone's different. Everyone sees the world differently. And so what stresses you out might not stress me out, and vice versa. And so when you're looking at trend lines, you want to look at you against you. And also for long-term health, if you've been measuring it, everyone knows their blood pressure, they know how much they weigh, and they know their cholesterol, but they don't know their systemic health. That's so easy to measure. And so if you have been measuring your HRV for years, even if it's just a couple times a year, if you start seeing a
Yeah.
downward trend, then you probably want to get into your doctor and get a checkup.
Mhm. Yeah, if it's
Um,
heart, something cardiovascular, some
It's
more serious items.
even if it's not, the
Mm.
nervous system reflects systemic health. You could
Mm.
start to have liver problems, and it will show up in your nervous system, because they're all tied together.
Mm.
You could have pancreas, you could have stomach, anything, all shows up in your nervous system. And so that's why I really say it's a systemic measure of health. We focus on sort of the athletic part, which is absolutely important, but also by measuring long term, if you start to see a major decline in your HRV, um, working out or not, that would be a trigger to go to the doctor. And Daily Meat will put you in a check engine box,
Okay.
is what we call
Check
it.
engine. That's good. I like that. But
Yeah.
also, I think that's so important. And so what's, your normal and when things are off and on. Because the other part of it is people tend to do too much and have the more is better philosophy. And especially the biohackers that are doing the sauna and the cold plunge and the HIIT training. And you hear the benefits. So they think, okay, I'm going to do that. So then they do it too much. Same with the fasting and too low of carbs, and not looking at, men and women are different, not women
Yeah.
that are cycling hormones still, that you need to change it each week of your cycle, divide that month up into 4 weeks. Those 4 weeks are going to be different fasting, nutrition, exercise plan.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so looking at tracking the HRV and how you can really know if you're doing too much of anything,
Right.
when you need to dial back.
And not only just too much or too little, but what?
But what you're
Like I
doing.
said,
Yeah.
some people go, "Oh, I'm going to do yoga," but they're type A, and
Yeah.
they're in doing this power yoga, and they're hurting their back, and
Yeah.
it's just it's a stressful thing.
Well, I
And
remember
then when
people
it's
were
time
doing,
for Shavasana, they can't lay there, you know?
yeah. Well, everyone remember when Bikram yoga got to be so popular, and it's like hour and a half, and people are just all getting injured because it was
Yeah.
so intense and it was 105 degrees, and they
Yeah.
go tell them to go every day. So I knew people are going 6-7 days a week,
Yeah.
hot yoga, because it was so healthy for you. But again, less is more.
It's
Three
yeah, no,
times you get the
exactly.
benefits.
And
7 times.
it's really sort of played into the type A go personality.
Yeah.
And not really, it's a little bit of a distorted what yoga is supposed to be about. You know, yoga provides you an opportunity to observe yourself and bring yourself together and release the things that get stored in the joints, and at the same time strengthening and preparing you for meditation so you can sit for any
Sit
length of
still.
time.
Most
Really,
athletes
yeah,
don't know how to sit still and be quiet.
I know. Well, most
I
people,
need to do
yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah,
So funny.
yeah.
Well, I know we're already up on the top of the hour. Anything we can put in the show notes, we'll add in the links. So Recover Faster, HRV for the coach, for people want to learn more.
Yeah,
Where should we send
and
people?
professional HRV is in review right now, so hopefully when this podcast goes out, it'll be out. And I apologize, Microsoft turned my camera off, and there's error codes coming all over the place. There's nothing I could do. I'll use another computer next time.
That's funny. That's right. It happens every now and
Yeah,
then.
it does. It
But
does.
yeah, so much great information. So we'll put links in the show notes, and we have lots of HRV podcasts we did over the past 10 years with Rhonda early
Yeah.
on in the podcast. So we'll pull those guys out of the archives. And I think, summarize everything, a lot of people have the Aura or a Whoop, or people using Apple Watch, but you still, if you want accurate measurement of your heart rate variability to know what's going on with your body, I would do the heart rate strap with the app to measure your real time
Or the
HRV,
handheld
or the
single
handheld.
lead
Yeah.
EKG, the WellU. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
I think that's
I
easier.
recommend that for the morning readings.
And people can buy that where?
Just go to our website at SweetWaterHRV.com and just purchase it there. You can find our supported heart rate monitors, and they also have a patch if people prefer that. I like the little handheld sitting by my bedside table.
Yeah, I'd have to learn I usually get up and go in the morning. So if I don't, I have to, that's why I got out of the routine of doing my testing, because I get up and go make the coffee, wash my face, do all this stuff.
I know.
That
We'll
I don't
set
have
the
my
timer
phone
on the coffee, and we'll make it for you the night before.
Yeah, I use my French press 4 minutes. So I could do my HRV on the sofa while I'm waiting for the French press.
See, that would be, I'm telling you, I just
that might work better, because I don't like my
new
cell
habits
phone
again. I need to get back into my better habits.
Yeah. So I don't like my cell phone in the bedroom because it's too much distraction. So if I have it downstairs charging overnight, in the morning when I'm boiling the water to make my 4-minute French press, I have that window that I could do.
You do. That's a perfect time to do your measurement. And even if you are sitting on the couch, as long as you're always sitting on the couch, then it's a really good way to do that.
So
and I recommend everybody to do that. Look at their morning, go, okay, how can I fit this in?
Yeah, create a routine. But every day, what's the minimal effective dose?
I would do the 3-minute reading every morning.
Every morning. But if people don't always do things every day. So set minimal goals, say 3 times a week, like every other day, shoot for that to start.
So find something you do regularly every week and tie that, whatever it is. If you go to yoga class, if you go to a gym class, if you're driving to work, I would put a strap on. I seriously recommend that one to remind you that traffic jam that you always stress out because it happens at the same exit every day, that it's not worth it. So that's a good way to do it as well, is to sort of get a good idea while you're driving.
Yeah. Fortunately, I don't have that traffic anymore.
Yay, I know.
So a new life. I got rid of that.
I got rid of it too.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, Rhonda.
Okay, thank you, Debbie.
Send their questions in and we can get into more Q&A
And if anyone has questions, they can also email me. My email's on our website.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay.